Good evening from Hawthorne, California. It is December 22nd, just after 5:12 p.m. Pacific time.
That's weird.
There's something behind it too. Hey, that lady probably snipped something in our drink. We probably both tripping and shit. Yo, that's crazy. This is why I said, let me bring my camera out here. You think they're supposed to be like, hey, that's Santa Claus or some shit, or? Cause like, this ain't funny. Look at that plane. There's a plane going through it.
What the fuck is that shit?
Dude, that's fucking, it's still going.
Oh, I deleted it, bro.
The way I got you. You deleted it, man? Oh man. It's gonna be in 4K.
What the fuck is that, bro?
Welcome to the webcast of the Falcon 9 mission, carrying the fourth flight of 10 Iridium NEXT satellites. Launch is scheduled for 1 hour, 27 minutes, 34 seconds universal time, or 5:27:34 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. SpaceX will not be following the first stage during the webcast, although you may hear callouts on the countdown net while we are following the second stage as it goes into orbit. Also of note, you may notice the inner stage looks slightly dark, sooty from the last flight, and it is. There was no need after it was recovered to totally clean and repaint that inner stage. That will take the satellite from the stage separation altitude of just over 70 kilometers at the edge of space and accelerate it up to the orbital speed of just over 7.5 kilometers per second, or about 17,500 miles per hour, 10 times faster than a bullet. The 17-foot diameter payload fairing, inside of which are 10 Iridium satellites. And then finally, the large white structure next to the rocket is our transporter erector. As a reminder, unlike the East Coast, here on the West Coast, the transporter erector will move away starting at about T-minus 5 minutes, just before T0.
Ridiculous. There is such a thing as best practices, and they may be the smartest engineers in the world, but apparently they don't know one of the most basic engineering principles that you learn in Engineering 101, and that is commonality of parts. Why would you have two separate, completely different systems to launch something? One or the other is better. It's complexity for complexity's sake. It's stupid.
That'll allow liquid oxygen to bleed through the turbopumps, begin chilling them down to prepare them for the ignition that it comes. The payload fairing with the Iridium NEXT logo on it are the 10 Iridium satellites. The Iridium team working no issues. They have gone to internal power and they are ready for launch. Everything looks good from the Air Force. Support is in place, ready for an on-time launch. And then finally, the weather. The good news is we don't have to do anything about the weather. The Air Force weather officer has given us a 0% probability of violating conditions. Upper altitude jet stream looks like it's in control. Ground level winds, as you can see, are very light. We're hardly blowing any of the mist away from the rocket, the cold moisture condensing from the chill of the liquid oxygen in the stages. That means we have to launch right on time today. Our launch window is 1 second long. Finally, when the second stage gets into the final orbit later this evening.
Damn, what the hell is that? Oh shit.
We'll be at 625 kilometers altitude.
Holy damn.
From there, we'll release the 10 Iridium satellites. They will make the maneuvers to their final orbits. Now that event sequence will last 15 minutes, and we're going to hope to bring that to you using a camera on the second stage later on.
like a rocket or something. I'm not quite sure what's going on here.
T-minus 2 minutes 40 seconds, continuing to count down for a launch. Everything looks good. While we're watching that video, the team has moved the Strongback away from the Falcon 9. We've done thrust vector control checkouts on the upper stage engine. We've done alignment of the guidance system. We've completed fuel loading on first and second stage, and we have just ended LOX loading on stage 1. So we're down to loading LOX on stage 2. Then we'll go into the final countdown sequence starting at T-minus 1 minute. Now, one note coming up at about 90 seconds, if you see and hear a large venting off of the Strongback, that's normal. We'll be draining liquid oxygen out of the structure alongside of the rocket, and sometimes that'll condense a lot of the moisture in the air at Vandenberg into a cloud. So we're going to listen into the last minute and 45 of the countdown of Falcon 9 with Iridium next.
Vehicle gas closeouts have started.
AFTS is ready for launch.
Falcon 9's in startup. Stage 2 tanks pressing for flight.
LD is go for launch. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff, Falcon 9.
Vehicles cleared the tower.
Vehicles cleared the tower.
Takeoff propulsion nominal.
Moving to 3.170.
Power and telemetry are nominal.
T plus a minute 10 into flight. We've just gone through throttle down and throttle back up of the Falcon 9 first stage engines. We've gone through max Q on the first stage. First stage continues to look good on the engines, headed downrange away from Vandenberg Air Force Base. We're chilling in the MVAC engine 2 minutes into flight, getting it ready for ignition. Next major event coming up in 30 seconds is shutdown of the 9 first stage engines, followed by stage separation and ignition of the second stage engine. Shortly after that, we hope to get a view of payload fairing separation from the second stage.
Stage separation confirmed.
Reset from startup.
We've had successful separation and ignition of the upper stage engine. First words from propulsion, things look good on the upper stage engine and the second stage.
Boost
Next
vector
up, we
shut
should
down.
see fairing separation.
Fairing separation confirmed.
You hear the applause from the team gathered around Mission Control Center here in Hawthorne. It's 5:30 in the evening. Second shift is in. They're watching the flight. Fairing separation looked very good. Exposing the 10 Iridium Next satellites to the vacuum of outer space. We're 3.5 minutes plus into flight. Second stage performance continues to look excellent.
There's something behind it too.
T plus 4 minutes into flight. Falcon 9 second stage continues to perform nominally. Power on the engine looks good. Avionics looks good. Guidance looks we're on track, headed south away from California, eventually overflying the South Polar Cap on our way off of Eastern Africa, where we'll eventually deploy later in the webcast 10 Iridium Next satellites.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Falcon 9.
T plus 5 minutes into flight, you can see the camera views looking back on the nozzle of the MVAC-D Merlin vacuum engine. Red hot, which is just what we expect at this stage of flight. The engine is at full power, continuing to perform normally, as I like to say. And meanwhile, the second stage is on trajectory, headed for its initial low Earth parking orbit. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but for now, everything continues to look good. In preparation for going into orbit. Once we go into orbit, we'll wait to hear a call from the Guidance Nav and Control Engineer, called GNC, on the quality of that orbit. And we've had good shots. And we've had good shutdown of the second stage engine. Now we're waiting to hear and take a look at the orbit.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Cook Delta
And we've heard
LOS.
the call out, a good nominal orbit insertion.
Alright, stage 1 has splashed
So
out.
currently the first stage mission has completed. We separated the second stage, it took over, did a burn lasting just over 6 minutes. We've had shutdown on that first burn of the second stage engine. We're in a good orbit. We're gonna go into a coast phase now, followed by a relight of the upper stage engine. And we have separation of the first Iridium satellite. You can see it at the bottom left of the screen drifting away. An on-time separation. Now every 100 seconds will begin a sequence where satellite 2, 3, 4, and continuing on will deploy. So 1 down, 9 to go, and we'll be back at time for the next deployment.
Okay,
Into flight,
expected.
we're getting ready for the second deployment. This one may be visible from the very top of the screen.
Spacecraft 4, separation confirmed.
We have deployment. The second of the 10 Iridium satellites successfully deployed, drifting away from the Falcon 9 second stage. Now, just for your information, we have 10 Iridium Next satellites that we launched with. They are stacked in 2 layers of 5. So the first 5 satellites that we are deploying are coming off of the top stack. We can see a couple. Others are going to be hidden by other satellites or out of view of the camera. Then when we go to satellites 6 through 10, those will be coming off of the lower stack, and so we'll get a couple of close-up views of the satellites that are closest to the camera. Coming up, we're about 10 seconds to deployment. Now it looks like we may have lost telemetry coverage as we expected for the deployment of the third satellite.
Expected.
We've heard the call out, loss of signal from the Mauritius ground station as expected. So we'll just stay here for a minute while we wait for the Falcon 9 telemetry to be acquired by the next ground station, which I believe is Dubai. And then we'll get indication on whether or not the third satellite has deployed. Confirmation through telemetry. The next separation coming up right now. A nice view coming off of the side of the payload dispenser that's mounted on top of the Falcon 9 second stage.
Spacecraft 5, separation confirmed.
The fourth satellite drifting away still, that white image just to the left, and we're about ready.
Spacecraft 3, separation confirmed.
And we have confirmed the fifth of the 10 Iridium Next satellites has deployed. However, this one was not in the field of view. By 6 preparing for deploy. This should be from the bottom of the screen, so you might see a little bit of motion as it moves away.
Spacecraft 6, separation
And there it
confirmed.
goes into the sunlight over the eastern hemisphere as we're passing over the Arabian Peninsula. 6 satellites down, there are 4 still to go in this 15-minute deployment sequence. About 15 seconds out, we now switch back forward to the view to look at separation of satellite 7, which I believe we will see coming from the top of the screen.
Spacecraft 9, separation confirmed.
So the 7th satellite deployed, also you may have heard it called Spacecraft 9. That's a numbering scheme that doesn't indicate that was the 9th of 10. We're through 7 with 3 more to go. Camera views have now switched forward again for satellite number 8. This one's on the back side of the dispenser, so we won't see it coming free from the Falcon 9.
Spacecraft 7, separation confirmed.
There's the confirmation. The 8th of 10 satellites has successfully separated from Falcon 9. There are 2 more to go. The next one up will be the satellite that you see currently on the payload camera, so we'll get a good close-up of that one separating. The 10th satellite then is on the backside of the dispenser, and we'll only hear from telemetry that it's separated, but we won't see that one. Camera again has now switched according to the timeline. We're looking at satellite number 9 preparing for deploy, coming up in less than 10 seconds.
Spacecraft 10, separation confirmed.
And a great view from the payload camera watching the 9th of 10 satellites deploy. You can see in the background, as we saw in the last flight, several bright dots. Those are earlier Iridium satellites that were deployed minutes ago, forming that long chain of satellites coming off of the Falcon 9. So we're down to 1 to go. That'll be coming up in just under a minute and a half or so from now, at about 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 18 seconds. We'll come back and watch that last one separate and then wrap up the webcast. Well, it looks like a bare dispenser, but there's actually one more Iridium satellite left on the back side of the dispenser. We're waiting for deploy confirmation.
Spacecraft 8, separation confirmed. Final spacecraft deployed.
Outstanding.
That's 40 in orbit in 2018.
We heard the call out, 40 in orbit in 2017. So we're 10 for 10. All 10 Iridium satellites have deployed right on time into the desired orbit. Falcon 9 looked good all the way through that sequence. So that's going to bring an end to our webcast. It says summarize events. It was an outstanding set of events this evening. We were followed along here at the webcast in Hawthorne. First stage counted down, a magnificent launch right on time in that 1 second window. Flew out, we had stage separation on time. For those of you who lived in Southern California, maybe as far as Arizona, Twitter has just exploded with a lot of pictures of people who saw what they call the twilight effect, the contrail of the first and second stages, forming beautiful images in the sky lit by the moon as well as the exhaust of the Falcon engines. So a lot for the people out here in Southern California to see as the Falcon 9 headed south out over the Pacific Ocean. We coasted halfway around the Earth, relit the engine, got into the desired final circular orbit, and then as you just saw, over 15 minutes, deployed all 10 of the Iridium Next satellites. So that completes 2017 for SpaceX, including 4 flights for our Iridium customer. All the flights this year, outstanding. Only looking for even more in 2018. We want to thank our Iridium Next customer, of course, as well as the government agencies that supported us,